how do you think you guys stood out in the essay?
So to be honest, I don't think that my personal statement, big essay, when I was applying to undergrad was very good. And I just applied to law schools, and I think I wrote a much better one. And I think when I was applying to undergrad, I wrote a really artsy essay, and my English teacher read it. And she was like, Andrew, this is beautiful. This is the best thing I've ever read. It's so pretty. And then I think people who didn't know me read it, and they were like, what is he talking about? So for me, I would say my biggest piece of advice to myself is like, answer the question and do it for someone who doesn't know you. Because you don't need to write like a ridiculous sort of like poem and submit that. You just want to write something that makes sense and really explains your narrative, like Mira said. And so for my law school essay that I just wrote, I started with this idea that I'm really interested in environmental law, and I'm really interested in like intellectual property law for biodiversity and dealing with plants. And I started off talking about different plants that I would grow back when I was living in at home in high school and going to the forest with my friends and sort of making tea with all the plants. And then I was talking about a job that I had where I was sort of helping plant breeding companies not sue farmers for doing that sort of thing with patented seeds. And then I sort of took it and zoomed out at the end. And so I think it's really important to just say, well, what's important to me, and like, why did it become important to me, and how did I grow, and just make it make sense to someone who doesn't know you.
Yeah, I definitely have to echo what Andrew said about answering the question. I think that's the most important thing. And this seems like such redundant advice. Like they give you a prompt and you have to answer the prompt, but like really think about what the question's asking and then just answer the question. It sounds so straightforward, but honestly, it's very hard to do. And when you're writing, you'll often find that you're kind of like writing along a tangential path that doesn't really answer the question. For me, that wasn't that much of an issue. My issue was finding a topic that was really interesting. And I also don't think my Common App essay was really that strong, to be quite honest. Like, it kind of sucks to hear, but it's probably true. I would read it now and think that, that's not really something that stands out. So try and find either an interesting topic or an interesting prompt that you can respond to and write about that, because if it's generic, it's really not going to do that much for you. So my two pieces of advice are to answer the question, which sounds redundant, but it really isn't, I promise. And to find something that's interesting that'll help you stand out. Because if you write about something generic, it kind of just gets lost in all of the other thousands of applications. And for me, I know if anybody's thinking about applying to the UC system, they don't use the Common App prompts for the essay. They have their own, I don't even remember what to call them, something questions, personal questions, statements. I don't remember. I'm terrible. But those, I think, were a lot better because they were shorter and there was a little bit more variety. I think you could choose 4 out of 7 or 9 maybe. And so I felt like I picked the ones that I could respond to in the most interesting fashion that also answered the question. So those are my piece of advice.
Yeah, so for the personal statement and your supplemental essays, I'd say 2 of my biggest pieces of advice would be don't be afraid to take risks in your essays. So standing out, from the perspective of standing out, taking risks is not a bad thing. My personal statement was an extended metaphor between chess and drugs. So it's okay to do a little risk taking there. And then try to inject your personality into your essays. So because I consider myself to be a funny person, whether or not that's true, I tried to make my essays a little more humorous. And I think that by putting your personality in your essays, that's another great opportunity to build a more complete view of yourself in your applications.
Yeah, so I definitely, definitely pick prompt that you feel like you can talk about, but also one way to think about it is basically all the prompts are asking a similar question, which is like, who are you, and what have you learned or done in the past 18 years that has critically informed like who you are and what you're going to bring to the school. And they're all asking it in different ways, essentially. And one way to kind of start ideating about what you might write about is like, think about your experiences in your life over the last like 2 to 3 years, like classes you've taken and like extracurriculars you've done and like things that have happened that have like challenged you or changed you fundamentally as a person. And kind of like free write about those experiences and what those experiences meant to you and what they were. And then from there, look at each of them and kind of think about, okay, what does this experience like do? What does this do in my application? Like, what does this demonstrate about me as an applicant? And then see which of them feels like the most relevant, and then see kind of from there which prompt best aligns with it. So I think my method is a little different from like picking the prompt and then answering, but having worked with a lot of college or high school juniors and seniors who are working on their applications, I found that that is generally like more fruitful because you get to work through like the things that are already in your head before you narrow down to the prompt. And then the prompt can give you more guidance on like where to take that idea that's in like this exploratory form and develop it into a coherent piece about yourself.